books to read to learn about the British Empire in India. A note before we go into this, I'm going to be referring to the entire subcontinent that the British colonised as India, as many of the texts themselves I'm referring to refer to the entire area as India. Number 1, The Discovery of India by Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru is one of the key founders of India. He was one of the key men behind the idea of India. I will say, this is the most recent one I've read. It's very shiny. I don't agree with everything Nehru has said. This book doesn't just cover the British in India. I'd say about a quarter of it is, a third, but it does go further back into the history of India, so that's also very interesting. I don't agree with the way Nehru writes about many topics in this, especially when it comes to people who are lower in the caste system in India, or some of the terminology he uses, also some of the ideas he has about the role of religion within India. Obviously, this is a man writing in the 1940s, and so some of the language and rhetoric that Nehru uses isn't going to be the best for the modern day and the modern sensibility, and there will be some things that he says where you're like, oh, why did you say it like that? But again, this was written in the 40s. This is a man who was educated by the British also, so that's where I'd go with that. I think it's a very big book, so this might be one where you'd read after getting into it for a while, after you've read a couple of other things about the British Empire in India and just Indian history in general. Secondly, we have Insurgent Empire by Priyamvada Gopal. This book doesn't just talk about India, but it talks about India and other parts of the British Empire and the role of dissidents and the role of freedom fighters, insurgents essentially, the British would call them insurgents, their role in shaping not only the colonial areas and their futures and where they are now, but also shaping British ideas of freedom. You know, what everyone goes about banning around, it's like freedom, we love freedom. Well, a lot of those ideas of freedom were moulded by the actions of people who are actually fighting for their freedom against the British, which is why it's also ironic when the British often go on about, we love freedom, we support freedom, and when those bases of freedom are based off of the actions of the people that they were actively oppressing for centuries. Thirdly, and this book I would say take with a pinch of salt. This one is the most take it or leave it for several reasons. It is Inglorious Empire by Shashi Tharoor. I will say I read this before I knew about the allegations against Tharoor. I wasn't aware of them. When I picked up the book and read it, I learned about it afterwards, and I possibly wouldn't have bought this book if that were the case, especially because a lot of the stuff that he refers to, a lot of the studies and a lot of the quotes he makes are addressed in other books you can read. It is the most popular, you know, like a pop science book, like the most pop politics book out of all the ones I would recommend. So that one I would either say don't buy this book, maybe get it from a library if you are going to read it. Tharoor definitely knows how to write convincingly, but a lot of the stuff he says you can find in other texts. I mean, Nehru's text itself, it refers to a lot of the things that Tharoor discusses in his own text. So this one I would maybe say, yes, it consolidates a lot of other things together, but it is the most, you know, pop politics, the least academic of the books, and also the allegations against the author do make me feel like you shouldn't buy it. But if you can get it secondhand or from a library, maybe, as long as he doesn't benefit from it, I suppose. Some special mentions: Line in the Sand and How Europe Undeveloped Africa. These obviously aren't exactly about India, but they do talk a lot about the British Empire and how it functioned, and a lot of the things it did in the Middle East and Africa, it also did in India, so you kind of get an insight as to how they operated. Line in the Sand in particular does reference India quite a bit in relation to the Middle East, so yeah, these two are also very good books. They're not obviously about India really, but if you want more reading about the British Empire and its actions and kind of how they did also have an effect on India and kind of the way they worked in other places, you can check those out too. And finally, because I want to keep this list short, The Empire Writes Back. So this book is more about literary criticism. It is a study of post-colonial writings, and a lot of the writings it does discuss are about places that were colonized by the British, and it does go quite a bit into India or the subcontinent. I will say I've not gone back to read this properly since I initially read it when I wrote an essay in school, because I was that kid. So this is one where I would mostly only get this if you are into literature and into studying literature and, you know, kind of going a little bit deeper with it. The other ones I recommended are more about the history of it, but I feel it was very important, very interesting to see discussions of post-colonial literature. And like the book says, post-colonial literature doesn't just mean stuff that came after colonization, it includes the effects of colonization on literature and, you know, society in general, and it does touch a lot on India, but also does touch on other parts of the world that the British colonized. So there you go, there were some books to read to learn about the British Empire in India. There are so many more I could talk about. I've read books that are a little bit more focused on Pakistani politics, but again, that does come under this Indian subcontinent, and I'm sure there are many books I didn't mention that I've probably not read. If you know any, please comment them down below. These are mostly sources that I will say probably won't paint a rosy picture of the British Empire, just because in the UK and in Britain, most of the stuff you will find written paints the British Empire as this just global force for good, when it very clearly was not. But yes, that is what will come out of all of my suggestions. So yes, if you disagree, you're going to write that in the comments down below. But if you have other books that one should read about the British in India, please also comment those down below. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member, and hey, hope you read a great book today. I promise my next video won't be so heavy.